Hey, what's up, guys? We're back here at AWS reInvent 2025. Really excited to be here with Ajay from Tiger Data.
Thanks for having me.
You might know Tiger Data previously was known as Timescale DB,
That's
open
correct.
source project, grew really quickly. And how old's the new name now? It's
It's like 5 months old.
5 months old.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
how's
mean,
it?
what's funny is our logo didn't change.
That's
Our
right. That's
logo's been a
right.
tiger since the beginning, so in some ways it hasn't changed.
You're in
But
my phone as Ajay Timescale.
there you
Still,
go.
so I
That's
gotta
fine.
update
Yeah,
that.
and
Yeah.
Timescale is still a sub brand. It still exists.
All right, for folks watching this, what is Timescale and Tiger?
So Timescale started. So we're a database company. We started a database company for time series data. Think sensor data from IoT. Think crypto. Built on Postgres. Eventually, we realized that this thing could be built on Postgres. It's actually Postgres has just become like the de facto database, and so we've grown as Postgres has grown. But the latest thing we saw is that agents are the new developer. I know you spent a lot of time thinking about this. 80% of Claude Code is written by Claude. I got a note from a customer this morning saying that 70% of their code is now written by agents. So if like agents are the new developer, okay, then how does the surface area of software development need to change? How does the database need to evolve to meet the kind of how agents work? And yeah, that's what we've been building for.
So agents are the new hot word. I feel
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if you go back a year ago,
There's
it was
AI.
we were just AI generally, but
Yeah,
agents
yeah.
have started growing. I'm curious if you can talk about in the last year, as you started seeing agents become more and more a pattern of how people were using this
I'll,
product.
yeah.
When did you see it? When did you start seeing this transition
I'll
occur?
tell you my personal story with this. First time I heard the word agentic was 2 years ago, and I thought it was just a joke. I'm like, what are you talking about? And it was this year when I used Claude Code for the first time. Like ChatGPT was really cool, but when I used Claude Code and I just saw it write code and I could look at the code in the folder and it could like, commit to GitHub for me and it can like deploy for me, I was like, whoa, like this is actually like having a developer. And I remember thinking like, dude, like I could build anything right now. Like I couldn't sleep that night. I was just like, I could build anything. And that was my first real thought of like, okay, agents are here. It's not just like, hey, I can like chat with you and you can tell me answers, but it's more like, wow, you can actually do things for me. And I think that's for me when it kind of unlocked it. I'm sure other people have had a similar story.
I had a very similar story. The
Yeah.
first time I used Claude Code, I think I was up until like 4 or 5 in the morning,
Yeah.
and I felt like a kind of like a religious fanatic or something when I talked to the team the next day. I was like, or the next Monday, I was like, you guys have to try this. Like it's the ability to purely prompt and build a full type of application end to end
Yeah.
is like completely transformative.
I went to a social event that night and it was all I could talk about. And I was like, I actually left early because I'm like, I can't stay here. I'm like, I need to go back and like keep working on Claude Code.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
How are agents using these databases differently? Like, what do you see compared to them? I don't know, just using Postgres
Yeah,
regular,
yeah.
through Prisma or something,
Yes.
or even like, previous eras of Mongo or other systems.
Yeah. So I think so. First of all, it is developers working with agents. So it's not agents on their own. It's like the
Got it.
developer.
Got it.
We still serve the developer, but we serve the developer as they're working with the agent. So you still have to build for the agent. Um, it's really interesting. Number one, I think the interfaces are totally different. Like we like to joke, agents don't click, they call. Like they don't click UI, they don't click links, they click buttons, they call APIs. In particular, like MCP and like local CLIs, they're picking a really key way. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about what is the right way to build an MCP that really works for an agent. It's a really interesting area. Even Anthropic, which came up with MCP, they're still figuring it out. That's number one. Number two is you don't want the database to get in the way, which means you need it to boot quickly, you need to fork quickly, you want to be able to, if as agents paralyzed to experiment, you want to be able to create sandboxes quickly in a cost-effective way. And then number three, like agents, they don't remember, they retrieve, right? So you kind of want to give it access to all the context it needs and then teach it how to retrieve the information it needs when it needs it, which really translates into like native search. So those are some of the few ways, but like I think it'll evolve even more. As I've been like working in Claude Code, you realize that like most tools actually aren't really built for this, and I think it's gonna be a really interesting new world.
Can you talk through with Claude Code or another, agent development experience,
Yeah,
um, what it's functionally doing with like MCP or the CLI that you have? Just
yeah,
kind of walk through like how it works in practice.
yeah. It's interesting. I went to your last MCP event at the big
Yeah, MCP night.
venue. What was
Yeah.
it?
MCP night. We're doing a third one on December 10th.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
they're kind of
I think
crazy.
it was really awesome, and I
Yeah.
actually had an insight while I was watching all these demos that like in the world of design, people talk about affordances. Like, how do you know you can do something, right? It's kind of like, hey, if a door has a handle, you know you can open it. That's where a lot of people got tripped up by the new like the Tesla doors because it doesn't have that affordance. You kind of have to be like, how to open this door? Oh, I gotta push this thing, right? I think what's interesting about MCP tool design is they are affordances for agents. It's essentially telling the agent, here's what you can do, right? And you don't want to give it too much information because then it gets confused. And you also you want to give it kind of like building blocks so you can kind of chain things together. And so I think that's one thing that's really interesting. So like, we built an MCP server for Tiger Data. And it works anything towards MCP. I personally use Claude Code, but you can use it in Cursor or whatever. And you could be like, hey, I want to spin up a database, and it can actually figure out like, okay, this tool lets me do that. Or you could say, hey, build me a database for this new application I'm building for, I don't know, like an IoT application, and it can actually use multiple tools. First, to spin up the database. A second one to figure out the right type of schema and best practices for this. And then third to actually deploy wherever you want to deploy it. So like, I think that's kind of what we're seeing, but it's still so early. Like it's just it's a fascinating world.
Yeah, MCP just turned 1
Yeah.
last week,
Dude.
which is crazy. That
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like barely a year old from announcements, not just from people building
Yeah,
on top of
yes.
it. And I suspect in the next year or so, the client support for still installing MCP servers is kind of pretty clunky. Trying to
Yes.
add it to Claude Code is pretty
Yes.
clunky, or
Yes.
even ChatGPT. You have to be in dev mode. It's this kind of
Yeah,
really
yeah, yeah.
annoying thing. So once we get past that, I think it'll maybe
It's
hit
also
mainstream.
they're different. The spec is implemented. It's not completely implemented by everyone. So different
Right.
people implement different parts of it. So
Right.
it's also some inconsistency there
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. How has your business transformed just generally with AI over the last
Yeah,
year?
yeah.
I'm curious, like, obviously the product is getting pulled
Yeah,
in
yeah.
this dimension of, agents or AI development.
Right.
How is the rest of the business changing? Are you changing your go-to-market?
Yeah.
Is there any stuff around you using agent systems internally, or
Yeah.
just as a company leader, how are you thinking about it?
So number one, people in the company have they're just doing more. And it's not like, I'm like, yeah, we talked about, hey, we should be using these things. And it was like, hey, if you don't buy ChatGPT, we'll pay for it, whatever, right? But what we noticed is that people in the company, whether they were in, engineering, design, sales, would find their own use cases and they'd share it. And I think so that is one natural thing, which is really great. The second thing is we actually built some internal tools. We built a Slack bot called Eon, and you can ask Eon anything, and it actually can pull information from Salesforce, from call logs, usage data, from the Slack transcripts,
Wow.
and it's actually and it is in 3 weeks. I think 60% of the company is using it every day.
Wow.
Like it was
And then
insane.
you just built that.
What's that?
It's not Glean. It's like
No,
your
yeah,
your
it's
own.
our own
The
thing.
Glean booth is right here behind me.
Yeah, and
You
I'm
can't see on
sure
the
Glean is
camera.
great. I
Yeah.
think for us, like part of it was like, hey, if we're building for agents, we need to actually just like build agents.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also, I think there's some things we do that, like, maybe cleaners would be a different, thing for. That's another thing, and I think number three is like we're very like attuned to how developer workflows are changing, and we hear from our customers who say that, hey, like I'm using this, like 70% of my code is written by, and like we're kind of internalizing that and kind of also recrafting the product roadmap as a result.
Yeah, if developers are using agents to write
Yes.
code or the review code, I mean, it changes the entire software development,
That's right.
life cycle, even
Yeah.
building and testing, creating artifacts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, you probably remember like the advent of SaaS.
totally.
And I
Yeah.
think SaaS was fascinating because before then, the main buying center was the C-suite, CTO, CIO, whatever, which meant the UI could look like crap. The key thing you had to do is like wine and dine this one person, take him out for golf. Right, cool. With the rise of SaaS, it became, hey, now the end user is the key decision maker, which means you actually need a really good UI. And now actually with the web, you can actually like on a high cadence improve the UI. So that was a huge fundamental shift in like how software was used. I think we're going through something similar now, which is it's gonna de-emphasize the UI, like the actual like web like GUI, but emphasize other parts of the user experience like MCP, like the terminal.
Yeah.
I don't think the web UI goes away, but I think it changes. I think it's gonna be I think another decade plus of I think new innovation there.
Yeah, I think it was this week or last week, Naval Ravikant tweeted something around like, UI is like pre-AI or something like that. wasn't
AI
it?
is the new UI.
AI is the new UI.
And I was
yeah.
tempted to retweet it to be like,
Yeah.
I'm like,
It's
I
a good
know, I
pithy
normally,
statement, you know.
I'm
yeah.
normally, I'm normally not a big fan of like super pithy statements
yeah.
because they feel performative to me. But in this case, I'm like, he's totally right.
Yeah.
It's,
yeah.
I mean, it is very
There's a lot of
pithy, like,
wisdom in that.
yeah, but
Yeah.
no,
yeah.
there's
Yeah.
something there.
Great. Great. Last question for you.
Yes.
We're here at reInvent, which is crazy for anyone that hasn't attended it.
That's right.
What is reInvent to you, and like, what are you really looking forward to here over the next couple days in terms of people you're meeting, things you're seeing?
Reinvent to me is like the bazaar. It's like being in the middle of the central market. Like, I don't know, I feel like I'm a farmer and and I'm coming into town. I'm in the central market and now I'm seeing what everyone else is selling, how they're selling it, what people are buying, how people are messaging. I love it because I feel like now you're like I'm in the market and I'm like, oh, so and so has a more consumer like kind of feel now. So and so has a more enterprise logo now. So and so has a bigger booth. So and so is not here. Uh, People are talking about AI. Some people aren't talking about AI. I love that. It's kind of just like it's like going to market and just see what's happening. And of course, like it's a very skewed perspective here. It's a bit more enterprisey. Obviously, it's an AWS event, but it is. I just love seeing how this is my sixth reinvent. It's also how it's evolved. Like I don't know, 5 years ago it was like big data, right, and cloud, and now like no one talks about that anymore. And it is fun to see how that evolves and just how the industry is evolving.